Hello, and a very warm welcome to the Mostly Peaceful Mums podcast. I'm your host, Elaine. You can find me anywhere online at the Mrs. What. Now, this is a very first interview podcast, and it's an incredible story with a very courageous young woman and whose story needs to be shared. So please listen through all the way to the end. Just take on board how powerful this truly is, and the bravery that it's taken for this young woman to relay her story and what has happened in her experience over the last couple of years. I'll hand you over to that podcast episode now, and I'll catch you again at the end. Hey there, and a very warm welcome to the Mostly Peaceful Moms podcast. This is my very first interview episode for this podcast, and I'm really excited to welcome a special guest. And our first guest, Charlotte, is a graduate. She's based here in the UK. And as we begin to talk, you'll have seen me chatting on social media about the different interviews. And if you've listened to the first few episodes of the show, you'll know there are a few formats here. And one of the formats is an interview podcast where we are sharing the stories of people who have been affected by the bizarre happenings of the last couple of years. And this is our very first one. Charlotte, very warm welcome to the show.
Hi.
Thank you for being here. Hi, how are you doing?
As good as I can be, really. Hi.
Yeah.
So you kind of covered who I am. I'm from London. I'm 22. I'm a recent graduate, and there's not really much else exciting. I mean, my plans post graduating would have been something along the lines of, going into performing arts and musical theatre, because that's all I've ever wanted to do. But obviously, I can't come and tell you all these fantastic things I'm doing because I'm sick. So it didn't really work out that way. Things I'm doing because I'm sick. So it didn't really work out that way.
No. And you say about your graduation that, there's not much to say, but ultimately you forced yourself to complete your course throughout what you've experienced, which is huge.
I didn't want to let the vaccine win in that sense. It was very much of, I really want this. I have been fighting for this since I was a young girl, and it's all I've ever done. Like, I grew up going to performing arts classes and competing and, performing in shows from like a little girl all the way up, and then, taking over as lead roles and doing all these fantastic things. And then, to pay all the money and get to uni and be like, okay, I'm on the last step, and then get taken out by the vaccine. It's like, oh, hang on a minute. No, I literally sat there from my bed and done it. And I managed to come out with a first, which I was really that's my phone going, really proud of, actually, considering everything else, which I was that's my phone going, really proud of, actually, considering everything I'd gone through. Like, I thought lockdown was bad enough, but to then get taken out by the vaccine on top was like, what?
Yeah.
This is not part of the plan.
and talking to you, I can really hear the strength, and I know you're upbeat and you're smiling through this, which is amazing. But I know that ultimately it's been a very, very difficult time. But let's have a look what your thoughts were. I mean, we touched on the lockdowns. What were your thoughts about the lockdowns at the beginning? How did you feel about what was happening in the world at the time? And did you at that stage fully trust the vaccines?
So I would say immediately I was very, very naive. I mean, lockdown came and obviously uni went online, and that was really my only concern. I was like, how are you going to do drama online? It doesn't work like that. That was really my only concern. I was very silly. And then I started to see families being destroyed and, lives being lost as a result of the pandemic. And then after that, in comes the rollout of the vaccine. So I was very scared of COVID. My family are very much at risk. And so when the vaccine came out, for me, I looked at it as a kind of like a lifesaver, like a ticket back to freedom, route back to normal kind of thing. And I was like, oh, brilliant, we're going to get this. We're only going to have, I think at the time it was 2 jabs, and everything's going to be fine. And I didn't think to research it because I didn't have reason to. I completely, like at 20 at the time, I trusted the government, and I was like, you know what? They wouldn't do anything to hurt us. I mean, how funny. I trusted the government. I trusted the scientists, like I was like, there'd be massive outroar if they'd done something bad. So surely, they couldn't be doing anything bad. And I just assumed they were piggybacking on the back of something they'd already done. That was genuinely my belief. I thought they were going to just piggyback it. And that's what I'd got it rushed through down party. And I remember her saying to me, she was like, you know, these vaccines do more harm than good. And I was like, no, don't be silly. Don't be
Yeah.
silly. And literally brushed it off. And then I went and got jabbed. And then obviously after I got sick, I had to come back and say to her, actually, you're all right.
Maybe you were right. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
were
Which
right,
is,
but
yeah,
yeah.
I mean that is really hard to do and to accept. But looking back, ultimately, you were guided. We were all guided down that pathway of the and this is the story we were fed. This is the problem. We have the solution. This is what you have to do to get back your freedom and to get out of fear. It was very much that is the path we're taking. This is what you have to do. And it was put to us that way. And it wasn't just said a couple times, it was
all the time,
fully
yeah. All
non-stop
the time. I remember
barrage,
watching all the, you know, when Boris would come on at like 4 o'clock, all the time,
fully
yeah. All
non-stop
the time. I remember
barrage.
watching all the, you know, when Boris would come on at like 4 o'clock and he'd chat about it. I remember watching all those things and being very on it. Like my dad, he's always watching TV. My dad always had it on. I remember being like, just taking note and then kind of like coming away and taking note again. And still, like, I was still going along like, la, 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 everything's fine. You know,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
it's hard to look back and imagine what sort of mindset we were in at the time as well, isn't it? It was
yeah, I
so
think, yeah,
bizarre. And because of that, it makes full sense that we should be able to trust what we're being told, especially as you say,
well,
the
you should.
big pharma companies, because why, like, as you quite rightly said, why would I actually need to do my own research?
Yeah,
Because
they're supposed to
we've
do
been
it for me.
told exactly they've done it for us, and
Yeah.
that's been backed up by the fact that it exists and is on the market. Of course it should be safe, of course it should be.
I feel like they didn't maybe report on what was actually going on because they were so keen on people to take up the vaccine that if
Definitely.
anything started coming out, I mean, when I remember when it first came out about the blood clots, and everyone was like, oh, and then it
Yeah.
was like, no, 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 it's all fine. It's just AstraZeneca. But actually, I
Yeah.
don't think it is. I don't think it is. I don't know, but I don't think it is. So yeah, I mean, for me with lockdown, I just kind of got on with it. You know, I was doing uni, and I was like, yeah, fine. You know, just kind of got on with it. That's what I mean, what else was there to do apart from just get on with it?
Quite,
You know,
quite, absolutely.
so I
So
didn't think much of it.
no, well, quite. Why would we? This was the path out of this awful situation we were in. So
Exactly.
it does make complete sense, and that is exactly the effect that was put onto us. That's what the requirement was by the people who created these solutions for the problem that we now know, of course, they created. But that aside, when these solutions for the problem that we now know, of course, they created. But that aside, when did you decide to get that first vaccine? When was that first appointment?
Oh, so I got my vaccine ahead of when everyone else my age was supposed to. So at the
Okay.
time, I would have been 20. I would have been about 20. And my dad is high risk. He'd had a big stroke and all these
Okay.
things. So he was very high risk. So the nurse had come to the house and he obviously came to jab my dad. And he was like, oh, is there anyone else in the house? And my mum had been jabbed by Pfizer, so she didn't need to. She was like, oh, you know, all my kids are in there. So it was me and my brother who was living at home at the time, and we both got jabbed. And obviously, at the time, I didn't think anything of it. So that was January 2021, and then I went back and had my second jab in May 2021. So I had
Right.
2 AstraZenecas, is what I had. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it. I mean, you know, it's like I guess my symptoms started straight away. But I didn't add it up. Like I didn't connect the dots.
Right.
Um, so obviously I got this stereotypical, like, you know, when you get your flu vaccine, I don't know if you've had a flu vaccine, but you know, you get your flu vaccine and your arm swells and feel a bit fluey and a headache and you feel a bit there. So, you know, I got all of those things and I just thought, oh, well, this is what happens with a flu vaccine. Like I had no
Okay.
reason to think anything dodgy of it. And even like I remember putting it down to so many different things. And I know that I've said before on like jab injuries posts and things like that,
Yeah.
you know, I was getting the breathlessness and I was like, oh, you're unfit. Just dismissed it completely. You
Yeah.
know, the temperature regulation issues. And I was like, it's a bit weird, but, you know, I'm sure I'm fine. And, you know, the headaches and, you know, oh, you're not drunk enough. And, you know, my arm was going dead. And I was like, oh, you know,
Wow.
I probably just slept funny, you know, because I did sleep funny and my arm would go dead and I would get
Yeah.
needles.
course.
I didn't have any reason to think anything else. And what I thought was it was just a load of individual different things, and I didn't think to add them up.
Yeah, and of course, and you've been previously healthy, and as a young
Yeah,
20-year-old woman, why would you, think anything other
I
than,
didn't think
this is just a
any.
few different little
Yeah,
things that happen, and each thing individually was just a tiny, small
yeah,
thing, but
just a
as they
small
start to
thing.
group
Yeah.
together, it becomes much bigger. So when did you really realize that something wasn't right? Did you decide, hang on?
About a month later. So, a bit of context.
Yeah.
I have very heavy periods because I have a bleeding disorder. So, I
Okay.
track my periods religiously and always have done since I started them. So, I've always tracked my periods, and I've always tracked how heavy they are and how, light they are and all these different things, because they are monitored by a team of consultants at the hospital. So every
Okay.
year I go and talk to them about how it is. And sometimes that could see on,
Yeah.
like there were so many pads, and they were very, very heavy. And
Yes.
so it's at that point. So the point I'm making is I always had them monitored and tracked, right?
Yeah.
So I have my first vaccine, and then my period disappears for 2 months. Now that is really, really unlike me. I am regular as clockwork. Pregnancy was out of the question,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, like that's when it started to click, and I was like, oh, okay, could be the vaccine. I remember googling it. I remember laying in my bed and googling, does the vaccine stop your periods? And there was like a handful of people saying yes, and I was like, oh, okay. Still just thought nothing of it. I was
Still
aware
start
that
to
something,
think, okay, it's normal
it's normal for it to do that,
for
is what I
that.
thought,
Yeah. Yeah. Still justifying
because
it in
all
your
the
head
evidence
because,
was
yeah.
still justifying it. Yeah. So they disappeared for 2 months, and then they appeared back for 1 month. And then I had my second lot, and they went again. Right. So that's definitely confirmed a
Yeah.
result of the vaccine to me.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember talking to my sister and saying, like, oh, beware, your
Yeah.
periods are going to stop. And then hers didn't. And I was like, right. So
Okay.
I was like, that's a bit weird, but they came back, and I was like, okay, fine. Again, thought nothing of it. The only time things started to get a little bit more sinister was by July 2021.
Yeah.
That's when everything had like started to add up and kind of got a bit like, ooh, okay, stop,
Yeah.
So July 2021, and it was maybe the end of July, and I had this issue with what I thought was my ear. Like I had this like pressure in my ear, and I can't really explain it. It was like kind of traveling down under the side of my jaw, and like this burning pain down the side of my jaw and my neck, and I was having
Wow.
difficulty swallowing. And I was like, okay, maybe I've just got a really bad ear infection or something. Still, I
Yeah.
was like,
Still
what's
thinking each
happening?
thing is not related to the other. No, that makes total
So
sense.
I rang the doctor, and I was like to the doctor, I explained what was going on. I was like, it's pressure. It's like, when you're on a plane and your ears pop. It was like
Yeah.
one ear would pop, and I was like, okay, well, it's a bit weird, but oh well. Just thought nothing
Yeah.
of it. And he go and take Sudafed and it'll clear it. And I was like, great. So I took myself on down to Tesco. I bought the Sudafed, and I come home, and I took the Sudafed, and that night I ended up calling a paramedic out because I thought I was having a heart attack. And
Wow.
so basically, I believed at that time that I was having a really bad reaction to the Sudafed. One tablet could cause all that damage. That's what I believed at the time.
Yeah.
And so out comes the paramedic, and my heart is racing, and I mean really, really racing. I have never known it race like that.
Yeah.
And so out comes the paramedic, and my heart is racing, and I mean really, really racing. I have never known it race like that. And after that, I think, yeah, I've been woken up out of my sleep with these like body jolt things. I can't really explain it. It's like, when you feel like you're falling and you wake up, it's a bit similar to
Yeah.
that. So I've been
Wow.
woken up out of my sleep, and it was racing, and I was like, okay, that ain't good. And I was sitting there, and I was dizzy, and I was like, I don't feel good. And then it started to skip, right? And I was like, oh.
Whoa.
And then I'd married it up with the jaw pain, and I was like, oh. So, I'd kind of got my
Gosh,
mum
that
out of
is
bed.
terrifying.
I was like, Mum, I ain't well. Like, you need to call someone out. And I've never in my life called out a paramedic. Never, ever
Yeah.
called out a paramedic. So for me to call out a paramedic I must have been feeling really, really sick.
Yeah,
So
because
out
there's
comes the
seriously
paramedic.
no way. Mm-hmm.
Out comes the paramedic, and he sits there really fast. And I'd explained to him what had happened, and that I'd taken the Sudafed, and on the back of the Sudafed, I was like, oh, maybe it's an adverse reaction to that.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, okay, sure, it's an adverse reaction to that, and your heart rate will calm down. And so he was like, go and see a GP. So I was like, okay, fine. So the next day I got up, and again I tried to dismiss it and pretend it never happened. So I got
Yeah.
up the next day, and I was supposed to be meeting up with my friends. I remember saying like, oh, I can't do it, I don't feel very well, I'll be fine in 2 weeks. I remember sending the message.
Yeah.
And so how ironic that I wasn't fine in 2 weeks. But
No.
I I'd gone, what did I do? I got up the next day, and I'd gone to a supermarket with my mum. And I was walking around, and I felt awful. I was really dizzy, again, heart
Oh,
racing.
gosh.
And I come home, and I was gagging, and I was retching. It was like, I thought maybe like the Sudafed was trying to come out,
Yeah.
kind of, if I brought it up, it would kind of go away, but
Yeah. This
did
was
it.
like, you think it would just clear it and yeah, you
Yeah.
can move
And I
on.
was drinking loads and loads of water, and I was trying to like flush it through, kind of thing.
Yeah.
At least
Well,
that was my
yes.
logic at the time.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Yeah.
So obviously I'd done all that, and I'd got to see the GP not the day after, but at the end of that week, because he wasn't free. So I go to the doctor, and I was like, this is what's happened. I got called out by paramedics. And he was like, oh, it's a blocked eustachian tube. And I was like, okay, when's that
Okay.
going to go away? What can we do about it? And he was like, oh, it'll be gone within 3 weeks. And I was like, okay, sure, great. I feel great about that.
Well,
And I was like, what
just
about the
by
kidney?
itself, were they saying
Yes,
it would just clear up by itself?
yes,
Okay.
clear by itself. And if not, they had to do some sort of procedure. And I was like, I'm not feeling the procedure, but I'm hoping it'll clear up.
Yeah.
Again, I had no reason to not believe them. I had so much faith in them. And I'd come home, and that night I was having these really like strange episodes. I thought they were panic attacks, but looking back on it, I don't think they were. Whatever, I'm probably
Yeah.
watching something funny, and then all of a sudden my heart would just start racing out of nowhere. And I mean racing to the limit it was the other night. And I was like, right. And I thought it was a panic attack, is what I thought, because I'd had something similar when I was younger, and I was having panic attacks. So I kind of put it
Okay.
down to that. And I was shaking, really, really shaking, and dizzy, and to the point where I was getting my mum to come and sit next to me and hold my hand. Like, I've
Oh,
never
you
been
and your
that
poor mum as well
person.
must have been
I
panicking
was like,
too.
literally a mess. And every time that happened, I then thought I would have to call a paramedic out. But obviously, I didn't. But it was just my anxiety going, "Oh no, it's
Yeah.
happening again!" And so that happens, and that continues happening over that weekend. And at that point, then the next day, my jaw locks up. So then it starts to
What?
get. So my jaw locks up, and I'm like, okay, right. So you go back, you call the doctors, and you're like, my jaw's locked. And I got hold of this woman, and she was there, and she wasn't very nice. So I'd rang her, and I was like, help! Like, I really don't feel good. This has all been happening. Now my jaw's locked. So I ended up contacting an ENT specialist, and he was brilliant,
So
absolutely brilliant.
ENT's ear, nose, and throat, isn't it?
Ear, nose, and throat. So I
Okay.
contacted one of them, and he was absolutely brilliant. So he,
Great.
does the one of like the hearing tests, and checks you out and sees what's going on. And he's like, no, 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 no. So that's like about a month, like over a month. And he kind of determines in the end that there was no blocked eustachian tube, right? And bear
Okay.
in
So
mind, I'd
straight away,
seen loads.
that's not
It's
it. So
not
you
what's
know.
wrong,
Okay.
So there was no blocked eustachian tube, so that wasn't the reason for it. And he suggested that it could be TMD, so like a TMJ disorder, so your jaw goes a bit wrong. And he'd give me these exercises, and obviously he said to me, stick to a soft food diet, because I couldn't. I remember so clearly. I had a spoon, and I had broccoli on the spoon, and by the time
Yeah.
I'd got the spoon in, and like a tiny bit of food diet, because I couldn't. I remember so clearly. I had a spoon, and I had broccoli on the spoon, and by the time
Yeah.
I'd got the spoon in and like a tiny bit of broccoli, I couldn't get anything else in, so it wasn't really
Wow.
working. So I was
Yeah.
drinking everything for a straw, and obviously getting dehydrated from all that. Um, so he tells me to go to a soft food diet and all these different exercises to try and open the jaw, and it does work eventually.
Yeah.
And I'd said to him, by that point I'd ended up pretty much bedridden, because I was so dizzy that the minute I stood up, my heart raced, and I was dizzy, and I was like, I'm going to collapse. So I just stayed in bed, because how can you navigate the world like that? It's
Dizzy?
like,
No, you can't.
you can't. I mean, it's hard enough when you're drunk, like
Yeah.
you're trying to navigate it But this is something else. Like, this is a whole new
Yeah,
level
this is the
of
full day
dizziness.
like that. This is
Yeah,
the
this is
full
not good.
experience. Yeah, it's
It's
not
not good.
just like a
So
short time till the alcohol
no,
clears. This is not going
no,
away.
it stayed like it. It didn't go away. I was waking up. This is
Full
not good.
experience. Yeah, it's
It's
not
not good.
just like a
So
short time till the alcohol
no,
clears. This is not going
no,
away.
it stayed like it. It didn't go away. I was waking up like it. And I remember at the time I was able to stand up in the showers. I remember trying to shower and nearly collapsing and seeing stars and all these things. I was like, this is not
Gosh.
right. This is not right. And I remember like having to call my mum to come get me out of the shower,
Oh
shaking, no towel around me, like,
gosh.
help. You know, which I look back and I kind of laugh on now out of like, I think it's more fear and like
Yeah,
trauma. You
just
know,
trying to,
like,
yeah, just trying to get that right in your brain. Did this
it's
actually
not
happen?
funny, no.
Mm.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So obviously I was bedridden, heart racing, dizziness, and I'd contacted them again. And I was like, I started doing my own research. And I was like, maybe I'm deficient in something. You know, like, is it an
Yeah.
iron deficiency? Is it, you know, kind of coming down that road? And is it my thyroid maybe? And, you know, coming down that road. And I remember phoning yet another member of that doctor's surgery. And they were like,
Everything fine.
no, everything fine, apart from a vitamin D deficiency that they worked out by the September. But you know, we'll skip back a bit and carry on the
Yeah.
story. so, so yeah, nothing wrong with me essentially, and I kept taking it as all right. So there's nothing wrong with me, but why am I feeling like this then? Like, and I remember saying to him,
Yeah.
I was like, can I have some dizziness meds? And he was like, yeah, sure. So he prescribes these dizziness meds. And I remember at the end of the call, I was like to him, I have had the vaccine lately. You don't suppose, considering I lost my periods after it, that it's anything to do with that? And he was like, no, of course it's not. And I was like, okay, fine. You know, because I
So
was very pro-vax
didn't
at the
even
time.
entertain the idea.
No, not really. And I was very pro-vax at the time. So I kind of took that as a relief. I was like,
Yeah.
oh,
Of
thank God.
course. Yeah,
You
your
know?
brain wants to confirm that what you
That's what my
think is
brain
right
wants to
is
hear.
right. Mm.
So, you know, I was quite pleased with that. But I still was sick and still like it's all over the phone. And I was going backwards and forwards to the doctors and I was racing heart as soon as I stood up and a racing heart whenever I did anything to the point where I'm very
Gosh.
lucky. Like my house is adapted because of my dad's strokes. We have a shower
Right.
chair and we have like a stair lift and I had to start using them because by the
What?
time I got up the top of the stairs, I was like, gone.
Feeling awful.
That's it. That's it. Me done for the day, you know. So I'd given up, you know, and I was very much bedridden to the point where I was eating my meals in bed and only coming downstairs, I think, for dinner. And after I'd come down for dinner, I was like, I need to go to bed. Like I just kept putting myself to bed, thinking rest, it'll be fine.
Yeah, just I've got to
Um,
get through this. What's the best thing
I'll
for
be
my body?
fine.
And you automatically think rest, and you've
Yeah.
already thought of checking
And
your body's not
paracetamol and
deficient.
everything like that. I've tried
Yes.
everything. I rang the doctors, everything you're meant to do, you know. So I was going backwards and forwards. I was phoning 111. I was Googling. I was trying everything, right?
So what sort of
And
period of time are we looking at now since the jab? Is this
since
going over a few weeks? Is this a couple months?
since the first jab was January. This is I was trying everything, right?
So what sort of
And
period of time are we looking at now since the jab? Is this
since
going over a few weeks? Is this a couple months?
since the first jab was January. We're kind of sitting at end of July, mid August. So it all
Right.
starts really, really firing off in the July August period. That's when life becomes pretty much unbearable at that
Yeah.
point. So, you know, I go backwards and forwards to the GP, and like I've seen loads of doctors in that surgery, and I get to see my proper GP, like my actual GP.
Yeah.
And I was phoning him and I was like, listen, I really, really don't feel well. Explaining to him, I had this big A4 page of everything that happened by that
Gosh.
point.
Yeah.
I was like, we've tested for this, we've done this, we've done this. We've like literally listing all the things we've done. What is wrong with me? And I remember saying to him, like, I'm really, really anxious now. Like, it's frightening me. Like, I've been unwell for what I thought at the
A
time was 3
long
weeks.
time. Yeah.
You know, I thought it was 3 weeks in me. Like, I've been unwell for what I thought at the
A
time was three
long
weeks.
time. Yeah.
You know, I thought it was 3 weeks. It was obviously a lot longer. But, you
Yeah.
know, I've been unwell for 3 weeks now. You're kind of, you know, I don't want to say it, but you're really kind of taking the mick here. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. I
like,
need some help now.
like if you don't know what's wrong with me, just refer me. Like, someone just needs to tell me what's wrong because it's driving me mad.
Yeah.
And he referred me in the end for health anxiety. And I was like, I
Okay.
haven't got health anxiety. I can't explain it, but it's like, you know, you've got symptoms
Yeah.
and they're causing the anxiety, not the
Not
anxiety causing symptoms.
Yes, it's not the
You
other way
know,
around. So so they're trying to treat something that's caused by the symptom rather than treat the symptom itself. That
pretty
makes no
much.
sense.
So he's like, go and send yourself off for that. So I was like, right, fine. I'll refer myself for health anxiety if you book me in for a 24-hour ECG. And he was like, no, I can. He kind of humoured, breathless. And still, obviously the doctor had said to me, it's not the vaccine. And I was like, oh, well, it must be a chest infection. It's the only other reason I'm
Gosh.
breathless. Like I did have asthma, and that would be the only reason my asthma would flare up would be chest infection, winter
Yeah.
illness, but it was in the middle of the summer, and I was like, sure, must be a chest
Still
infection.
trying to figure out what on earth, your brain just on overdrive. What is happening?
When I
Looking
look
for
back
stuff.
on it,
Yeah.
I'm like, what is wrong with you? How did you not see it? But I was so naive. So
Plus,
I
you've
go
been,
back.
brainwashed through the whole thing with this giant barrage of
Yeah.
information and you've been told by a doctor this
Well,
is
it's not
nothing to
that.
do with
Yeah.
the jab.
So
All understandable fully.
So I go back and I'm like, I think I've got a chest infection. And he's like, no, you haven't. And someone referred, I don't know what they gave me. They gave me some medicine that can't be taken if you're having an ECG. So obviously I rang back up and was like, I can't take that. No, 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 no. And they were like, I don't know what they gave me. They gave me some medicine that can't be taken if you're having an ECG. So obviously I rang back up and was like, I can't take that. No, 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 no. And they were like, okay, don't worry about it. And I was like, okay, cool. And just kind of left me to it.
Yeah.
And I remember I'd managed to see my GP for the first time. So it's the first time he's seen me. Remember, there was other doctors that had seen me.
Yes.
And the rest were all phone calls. So he sees me for the first time, and we have to literally tell him I haven't got COVID. Like, I've got a COVID test saying negative. I don't have COVID.
I've not got that. Yeah.
Right. So he takes me into this room, not in the normal servicing rooms you'd get in your GP. He takes me around the back. So we go around the back, and he's like, oh, this is the COVID secure bit. And he's all dressed up in his PPE, which I understand. You're a doctor, you don't want to catch this. And he comes up to me and he's like, your heart rate is a little bit fast. And I was like, well, no, I've got one.
Yeah. I've kind of been saying this.
So, you can't keep quiet. I'm very, in person, I'm very timid. In person, I'm a very timid person. I'm very much like, oh, really? Is it? Oh, I hadn't noticed, And he was like, and you're breathless? And are you anxious? And at the time, I was a little bit anxious, but definitely not super anxious. I was like, if anything, relief, someone is finally seeing me. They're going to fix it. Anyway, so he's like, he disappears and he comes back and he's like, you need to go to A&E. And I was like, I need to go to A&E? And he was like, yeah, I think you've got a blood clot in the lung. And I was like,
my gosh.
Right, thanks. So obviously mum gets in the car, we stop at home, we pack a bag just in case they keep me overnight, and we go driving off to A&E. And at that point, it clicks, and I'm like, blood clot in the lung. And I worked out that I couldn't have blood thinners, or at least I don't think I can because of my bleeding disorder.
Right.
And I thought blood thinners were what undone a blood clot. So I was sat there and I was like,
I can't.
What's So I'm sat there in the car and I'm like, Mum, like that? She's like, yes, I have. I know. We're gonna have to deal with it in a minute. We're all very, very stressed. And so I get into A&E and I'm dizzy, and they won't let my mum come in with me because it's in obviously the height of COVID and it's one person each. And my mum was like, she's really dizzy. She can't stand there. You have to stand there in the queue and sign up and sign in and all that. And mum was like, she can't stand there. And I was like, no, I can't. But anyway, they didn't listen. And I had to go and stand in there for about 40 minutes. I was standing.
Standing up whilst you're dizzy for 40 minutes.
And the heart rate while you're standing is going to climb, isn't it?
Yeah,
because it's already been climbing.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm standing there and I see the first lady and I'm like, oh, check in my name, Charlotte, date of birth and all this. And I was like, I pulled out my bleeding card. So I've got a bleeding card that states that I've got a bleeding disorder. And if there's any major trauma going on, you need to call this number. It states that I've got a bleeding disorder. And if there's any major trauma going on, you need to call this number. So I pull it out and I'm like, I explain what it means. And they're like, yeah, we know what that means. We'll do something about it. And I just naturally assumed they were going to call my bleeding team.
Yeah.
Because obviously I'm not a normal person. You can't give me blood thinners.
Yeah.
You really can't. And to a normal doctor, they're just going to give you blood thinners and not think twice. They're going to want to try and fix you as quick as they can. So I was like, panic, absolute panic. And I go to the next little nurse, receptionist bit, and I'm saying the same thing. And I'm like, you need to call them. And then I go outside and I'm saying to mum, like, they're not calling him. They're not calling him. They didn't even move, right? And I was like, they're not even calling him. So I was
Gosh.
freaking out. And in the end, we get hold of my sister to ring them. And I get seen by the triage bit, and I go in to see the first doctor, and he puts obviously the blood pressure thing on my arm and the thing on my finger. And I remember the look on his face. I honestly believe that's what was wrong. And obviously, I didn't find out until later that my pulse was really, really, really high at this point.
Yeah.
And they went out to the car park to get my mum, who previously wasn't allowed in. They went out to the car park to get my mum and called her in and were like, we're taking her to recess. Right?
Oh my goodness.
So at the time, me still absolutely oblivious. Like at that point, I was like, it's okay, well, we'll run, because it was only like a handful of steps.
Yeah.
I thought, I was like, yeah, it's okay, it's full. And he was like, no, you need to get in the wheelchair. And I was like, no, don't be silly. It's literally like a handful of steps. I can walk that. And he was like, no, we need to wheel you. And I was like, that's at the point where I realised I was really, really
realise how
big. Yeah. And I remember at that point, messaging one of my friends, and I was like, it's not really the message you want to hear. You know how I haven't been well? I don't think I'm going to make it out of this one. It was genuinely what I said. And at the time, 20, you shouldn't have to be trying to make your goodbyes to the people you love at 20. Because I'd worked out blood thinners, can't have them, high heart rate, heart attack, possibly, and I was like, I ain't making out of this one.
wow,
I don't think
Charlotte, that's awful.
So, I laugh along it, because if I don't
well,
laugh,
yeah.
I'll cry.
I totally get it. Yeah.
So I remember, contacting, my best friends at the time. So it would have been Adam, my friend Courtney, and I was like, listen, I don't think we're gonna make it out of this one. And I was like, it's obviously not the message you want to hear. And he was like, no, don't say that. And I was like, no, really, I'm really, really not well. I'm not just saying it for the sake of saying it. I'm saying it because I really, really
I'm not being dramatic here. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, don't get me wrong, I am very dramatic, but in this case, I'm not being dramatic. I'm just saying it straight. So I get obviously rushed into resus, and the resus team were lovely, so lovely. And obviously the haemophilia, so I've got bleeding disorder. The haemophilia team, they come down and then they're talking very well. So I get obviously rushed into resus, and the resus team were lovely, so lovely. And obviously the haemophilia, so I've got bleeding disorder. The haemophilia team, they come down and then they're talking to him, and I get x-rayed, and they're like hooking me up to an IV drip, and they're like asking me all these different questions. And then eventually, after about, I think it might have been an hour and a half, 2 hours, or what felt like that, roughly. I was in there a good while in resus, and then they moved me down to majors. So that was obviously like a bit of relief in my head of, okay, so we're out of the immediate danger.
Yes, you feel like it's de-escalating a little, but were you feeling any better at that point, or?
No, if anything, I kind of come across pretty asymptomatic. Like, I was just chill, like I'm talking to you now. I was like, yeah. Laughing my way through it, because obviously if I acknowledge what's going on, I'm going to have a complete breakdown. So I'm like, yeah, fine. I am just very, very anxious, So I took me up to like the pulse and the blood pressure and all this. And one of the nurses, I remember her coming around, she goes to me, your heart is going like you're running, and yet I'm just sat there laying in the bed. Yeah, like, is it? I hadn't noticed. Like, I genuinely hadn't. It must have been going so fast for so long. I'd become used
almost this new normal. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, oh really? Is it? Oh, sorry. Like, I'll try and get it down. Drinking some more water, and they're still flushing me through loads of IV drip, basically. And one of the doctors comes in, and they're like, "Do you have any history of sudden death in your family?"
What?
And I was like, no. And then my mum was obviously there to clarify. No. Like, any history of heart problems? No. We obviously mentioned my nan and granddad. They'd had a heart attack, but they were like well in their like 50s and 60s and all that. Like, they were older. And at 20, it's not really.
No people at 20 years old, healthy, young.
Nothing wrong. So I was like, no, not any of that. So I was like, no, not any of that. I was like, my dad had a stroke, but again, he was older, Literally, they couldn't piece it together as what I was getting. They couldn't quite work it out. And they'd said to me, if my heart reaches 100, then I can go home. And at the time, I remember talking to him. I remember seeing my heart at 142, which was quite good, because it had obviously been a lot higher than what it would have been. So in my head, I was like, 142 record. We're going to get it out of here in no time. I was like, yeah, fine.
This is an
You know,
improvement. Wow.
I thought it was great. I was like 142. That's brilliant. And obviously we got to the end of the night, and I still hadn't gone for a CT scan, so they couldn't
Yeah.
let me out yet, and my heart rate didn't hit 100, so I obviously wasn't going home. And I
Right.
was like, right, okay. And obviously they
What
tested me
now?
again. They tested me again for COVID, and again coming back it's not so. And they're like, your mum can't come in with you. Now by then I am in tears because I'm
Oh,
like, you don't understand. Like, I'm not a normal person.
yeah.
I've got a bleeding disorder that arguably no one understands. I
They
can't
just weren't
lie to you.
listening.
They're not listening. And, I go to the doctors and I say to them, I've got this bleeding disorder. Can I take this med? And they go, yeah. And you come back, look at the side effects, and it'll say, don't touch it. And I'm like, so, people, you're already like used to people not quite getting it and having to explain it to people.
Yeah.
So I was sat there and I was absolutely crying my eyes out. I was like, no, because if I fall asleep and you come and jab me
And
with
someone
something, like,
does something. Oh my gosh,
I'm
that's
going to end up iller.
awful.
And that had happened with my sister when my sister had been rushed into hospital and she'd been operated on, and they tried to give her blood thinners. And obviously, she'd got really, really ill. So I was having like a complete breakdown at this point,
Yeah,
which
that on
obviously you
top of
think
what you're
the
already
nurses,
experiencing would
yeah,
be,
you think the nurses wouldn't try and, give you a breakdown considering your heart rate is that high. Can't stay, and then they let us stay eventually. And I go for the CT scan, and they find nothing. So there was no blood clot. And eventually, like by the next morning, she has to leave, and I'm stuck in there for a few hours. And obviously that day, I have my 24-hour ECG organised, like the doctor promised me.
oh, the previous
So
appointment. Yeah, okay.
previous appointments, I was like to him, I'll be fine. I'm going for that. They're going to work it out. I was probably just anxious because I didn't know what else to think. If it wasn't a blood clot, then I must have just been anxious.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware that there were all these dodgy heart rhythms and whatnot. I was like, it's fine. And I got myself discharged, and I was like, haha. And by then, I thought I was great. I was like, look at me, I got out, made it out
Yeah.
alive. And so then we go for my 24-hour ECG, and when the results come back for that, my doctor again is like, no, you're fine. And then I asked him to print what was actually on there, and I had highs of 179, and then I asked him to print what was actually on there, and I had highs of 170 I want to say, just
What?
about walking. And I wasn't running, I was just walking, and not very fast. Bear in mind, I've just come out of hospital. I'm not going to be running myself down the road, am I?
No, no,
Highs
no,
of
no.
175, just walking a short walk. And then when I was sleeping, it was dropping nice and low. So it's obviously when I'm walking, when I'm moving about, there's issues there.
Yeah, being
Uh, and
upright.
still, and still, he was like, nope, nothing wrong. And by
What?
then, I'd found my discharge report from the hospital, and it said ventricular tachycardia. And so, me, I'm very. I'd say that my knowledge is a double-edged sword. Like, it's a
Yeah.
good thing because I know what's going on, but a bad thing because I know what's going on. So I don't
Yeah.
know what that means. And then I'm like, oh, it's like it could be potentially lethal. And I'm like, what? So I was like,
Yeah.
why did they send me home with ringing the doctor back up? And I was like, what is this? And he was like, we can't access the ECG, so I can't tell you what's going on, but it doesn't look like that, but it is that. And I was like, well, what is going on? So I go back to the GP again. I'm like, listen, I'm still sick. If I was going to recover from it, I would have recovered from it by now, don't you think? Like, I'm still sick. Can we do something about this? Like, is there some sort of med? Is there something we can do? And I remember him saying to me, my magic wand isn't working today. And at that point, you just want to head
What?
a wall. Like, I'm done. At that point, you're like, I just need to leave now. So, yeah, my
He
magic
said that to you.
wand
My magic
isn't
wand isn't
working
working.
today. I was like, like obviously I just looked at him as if to say, I haven't even got the energy, to deal with you at the minute. I'm just like, okay, you don't want to help. That's fine. Just send me for the test that
Oh
you wanted
my
to send me for.
goodness.
And when I see my consultants in the winter for my bleeding disorder, I'm going to talk to them, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because every time I come off the phone with them, I was crying, and I was like, I just, I was begging for someone to help me. It's all I wanted. I just, I was begging for someone to help me. It's all I wanted, someone to help. And I also remember, and I've missed that point, but I'll highlight that very quickly in the hospital. When I said I was upset, and I was like, everyone doesn't understand
Nobody's
haemophilia, and
listening. Yeah.
no one's listening. I can't take ibuprofen, but the average person would just assume, yeah, ibuprofen, fine. So I
Yeah.
was like very authentic. And I remember talking to the nurse, and I remember the nurse saying, I remember watching that nurse when I was having the mini breakdown. I remember the nurse saying something like, she's 20, she's a grown woman, like she should be fine. I'm like, no, but you don't get it, And that same nurse comes to me the next morning, and she's like, what is haemophilia? I just looked
what?
at her and
She'll be
like,
fine. And then what is that, by the way?
My point. You prove my point. You wait until the end of your shift to then ask me, what is it? It just proves my point that I wasn't safe, or I didn't feel safe in their hands. And then thing out of my arm, where the IV drip had been in, they took the thing out of my arm, and also my arm's going to bleed, and it was like really, really bleeding. They put the gauze down, and it soaked through the gauze in seconds. And she just looked at me, and I was like, it'll be fine. Give me another, and I'll hold my hand. It'll be fine. And then I was like, I'm dizzy, and she was like, I don't think you should leave. I was like, no, I'm leaving, trust me, I'm better off.
I'm definitely not staying here. Goodness me.
Who needs a bush tucker trial when you've got the hospital? But I obviously.
So at this point, was there any more talk about the jab? Did they try and did anybody listen to you about? Did you think to mention it again at this stage, or are you just getting through this minute?
At this point, I'm googling it myself, and I come across like adverse reactions. And I'm like, okay, so maybe it's not Sudafed that's caused all this. Maybe it genuinely. And my sister was ringing me, and she's like, it's that jab. And she was double jabbed herself. She was like, it's got to be. It's the only thing that's changed, So maybe it's not Sudafed that's caused all this. Maybe it genuinely. And my sister was ringing me, and she's like, it's that jab. And she was double jabbed herself. She was like, it's got to be. It's the only thing that's changed,
nothing
that's the
else.
only thing you've done.
You've
done nothing else. It's got to be that. And so as time goes on, I beg the man that's running my GP thing for a cardiology appointment. And that's booked in for the December. So I'm kind of ticking along. And I remember it hit my 21st birthday, and everyone's supposed to be out and celebrating. And I attempted to go to the theatre, which was highly amusing, but I look back on it. I won't be doing that again. So I attempted to go to the theatre, and my heart rate was sitting over 140 the entire time, and at 180 just standing, and let alone the walking. It was really, really racing. So I had a Fitbit on at the time,
so you
and I was able to see what was going on. So that was causing even more anxiety when I come home and realised what it was doing. And I was like, this ain't right. So that was causing even more anxiety when I come home and realised what it was doing. And I was like, this ain't right. This is not right. So along comes December. And by obviously this point, we're in the new semester for uni, and I can't go because I can't even stand up. So how are you supposed to do drama when you can't even stand up? So obviously I have to kind of fight for that and go online. And so I'm online for uni. And December comes, and the appointment gets cancelled. And I'm like, right, okay.
So now what? So did they rebook it? What happened then?
They reschedule it. And it was organised to be in the same hospital that I obviously had been admitted to when I was really well. So I had a little bit of trauma there. So I knew my heart rate was going to be up anyway. So, I go to that appointment. They're like, come in and see us. We're going to the appointment. And they're like, actually, we can't see you because this is a telephone appointment. And I was like, no, it ain't. Like the thing quite clearly states, park up, come in person. So they was like, no, bring on. And I explained the vaccine. And they're like, right. And that's when they start organising these tests. So they want another ECG. They want another, the one where they stick, obviously, ECG, and then they've got the other one where they kind of go over you like an ultrasound of your heart kind of thing. Right. They give me one of them, and they book up for all these different things, and kidney tests and all these different blood tests I'd go in for. So that was going on. And at that time, I was also trying to walk. So I was trying to walk. And as I was trying to walk, I was getting all these skip beats. So then I realised that walking probably wasn't the best option. So I kind of frightened myself there, and I was contacting a private cardiologist at the time. My family had chipped in, and I was like, what is this? And is it the vaccine? No. Okay, right, fine.
Just so still anyway, denial.
No. Well, you don't entertain it. But anyway, as time goes on, the cardiology that I was under now was absolutely brilliant. And they ran through all these tests, and they basically said I was healthy. Structurally, my heart is fine. And they basically said I was healthy. Structurally, my heart is fine. And the blood tests were fine. And the only thing that came back as dodgy was the rhythm. So what happened from there? is I didn't have ventricular tachycardia in resus. I
Which
was
is
in
what they first were saying.
Yes, I was in SVT, so supraventricular tachycardia, which
Okay.
is slightly different. So I had that in resus, so that was cleared up for me. So that's already one dodgy rhythm, so one SVT. They were like, yep, and you've also got inappropriate sinus tachycardia. And I was like, right, IST. Okay, note that down. And we think you've got POTS too. So postural static, yeah. So tachycardia syndrome. So basically from there, I'm like, okay, so there's three things wrong with me now. At least I know what's wrong.
Yeah.
What are we going to do about it? And they were like, yeah, we're going to, try and get you approved on these meds. Obviously, your haemophilia team have to say if that's okay or not. So they marry up the meds. And I get given these meds. I can only take them on an as and when basis, as opposed to every day. So only if I'm feeling really, 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 really bad do I take it. And obviously, if I'm not moving about, I'm not leaving the house, it's not like stupidly often I have to take it. But definitely like moving about the house and the high heart rates, it all still happens. But I've just got used to it. I'm so used to it now. I'm like, right, it's only on really, really bad days. I just have to kind of suck it up and deal with it. So yeah, that's where we are.
So you're still so say we were talking just a few minutes ago about December, the appointment that was changed in December. That was December 21.
That was
eventually
December
got
21.
for that appointment, which was still December 21, was it?
No. My new appointment came through for February
22. So it left you another 3 months alone.
And then
all these problems.
Another month with all the tests.
Right.
And then I didn't get my meds.
Ongoing. Ongoing.
May, I reckon. I think it was about May I got my meds because I took them for the first time in June. So,
wow.
By May, I've got a rough idea. And there's a letter that comes through and they reset, talking about what we spoke about in the appointment. And they say on it, she's been experiencing all this post her vaccine. So they are acknowledging that post her vaccine, this is what's happened,
Right.
And on call, they'd said to me, there's literally no other reason other than, literally, there was no other reason. It had to have been that because there's nothing else. Caffeine. I'd cut caffeine completely from my diet. Completely.
Wow.
Doesn't exist. And I'd done, all the things that you'd think would put your heart rate up, stopped it completely stopped it. And I've started joining from then all these support groups for POTS and all these different rhythm issues and and then again obviously I now had the vaccine so then I started searching for all the support groups and I'd come across this brilliant support group and I joined them and I was looking at all their things and how their experiences and they're not much different.
Wow.
A lot of them gaslighted, a lot of them ignored, a lot of them just kind of
I mean, aside from all of the awful symptoms and all this awfulness that you've been through, on top of that, you're treated like you're the insane one. And my goodness,
I was made to feel like I was crazy. I genuinely felt like I'd been through all the counselling as well. So I'd been to the health anxiety, like I'd promised.
Yeah, like you said you would. Yeah,
3 counsellors and they didn't fix it. I think what I've got is PTSD. I think that's what's wrong. In that sense, I don't think I've got health anxiety. I think I've got PTSD. From all of this is what I think is going on. And so much gaslighting, and there's no help. There's no help really.
Sort of idea of when this will be fixed.
So they seem to think it was 12 to 18 months. Now it's been 15 months since that July period.
Yeah.
So realistically, it should be fixed. But then if you consider from my first dose, we're technically at that deadline. So why am I not fixed? I don't know whether it's because I've got 2 doses and obviously it's going to take a lot longer to come out the system. It could be something along those lines.
Right.
So I'm just kind of waiting for a miracle is what I'm doing. My whole life is on pause. Like I said to you, I was going to do all these amazing things.
Yeah.
But here I am.
So what's life like for you on a day-to-day basis now? You should be, I assume, out at this point, finishing your degree. You should be looking for things you can use that degree for. But what is your day-to-day life like?
So day-to-day life, on a good day, I'll be able to walk around a small Tesco Express. On a good day, that is it. right? That is life. That is the most exciting part of my day. On a bad day, I'll be spinning. I'll have to put myself back to bed. I'll have to sleep it off. I'll have to take meds. On a bad day, this is what happens. But on a typical day, I'm usually dizzy, and I can normally kind of function like that until it gets really, really bad, and then I have to lay
When
down.
you
And then
got
we've
to,
got a day like
yeah,
today. I'm just sat there in bed, my eyes shut, telling you all these different stories.
yeah.
So, I mainly get affected by the breathlessness, the dizziness. The heart rate is my worst enemy. My heart does not like me. So I'll be trying to access like washing my hands, and my heart's like bang, 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 and I'm like, what?
Wow.
So
Wow.
it's using the stair lift. It's sitting in the chair when you're like having your hair washed and all that.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it's using the stair lift. It's sitting in the chair when you're like having your hair washed and all that. And try and have a very, very quick shower on a very kind of coldish temperature, because obviously heat
The
is going to put it up some more.
yeah,
So you've
right.
got to be really, really careful, and really careful about obviously no alcohol, no caffeine. Be careful on your diet, and all these different things I've now got to kind of take into consideration, which before I wouldn't have even thought of. Like
No,
be
why?
very careful with spicy foods, and
Gosh,
and
yeah.
salt. I don't know what it is. Obviously, I now know it's a pots thing, but salt seems to be my best friend. I don't
Right.
know. Salt
Yeah.
is my best friend. Loads and loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of water, electrolytes, everything you can think of. I'm doing everything, and yet still, when I stand up, it's not really working. And I ended up having to take my Fitbit off because it was just causing me so
Just,
much
yeah,
anxiety.
it
Just
comes to a
looking
point
at
you just
it,
can't take that information in
I
anymore
couldn't
because
take
it's
it. It
just
was driving me
worse
crazy.
thing. And I don't, you'll be able to tell
Mm.
me if this is the biggest thing. Is the biggest thing is this abandonment? Like
Yeah,
you're left in this sort of no man's land
very
of
much.
when's the end? When's this gonna
Yeah, we don't know. We don't
finish?
really know. Like,
And
there's no, to my knowledge, there's no clinics for us. You'd think, you're going to create this vaccine. Some people are going to get sick, as with any vaccine, right? So why wasn't there measures in place for us? Why? You know, there should be therapists in place because,
well, they've
hang
washed
on, it
their
didn't work out for
hands
us.
of
Yeah, they just kind of
the
left
care.
us.
And your support group, is that just set up by people in the same
Oh,
position
yeah,
as
vaccine
you?
injured. Yep, we're all in the same
Okay.
boat. All of us in
Okay.
the same boat. Obviously, not all got identical symptoms. Some have worse than
Yes.
others. Some have different ones, but we're all sick, and we're all kind of clubbing together on this idea that
Yeah, nothing.
surviving.
You've done nothing other
Yeah,
than the what was told to be the right thing. As
unexpectedly,
you said, you've been told one
unexpected,
thing and
wholeheartedly. And I look at it, and I'm very much of the thing of like, you know, you should be aware of what's going on. When I first got my vaccine, there was no side effects leaflet. And I
no,
would know that
no.
because I always look at the side effects because I'm always likely to experience them. So
Yes,
there was,
because of your existing complications,
yeah.
absolutely.
So there
So
wasn't anything like that. No.
that well, quite. It's not informed consent, is it?
Well, this is what
It's
I'm saying. Yeah.
you've been given a promise, and it's
Mm.
all in the air now, and all of a sudden
Mm.
that's disappeared now that you've done your part. So
Mm.
how do you see the future for you? Because I mean,
Very uncertain.
now that you've done your part, so
Mm.
how do you see the future for you? Because I mean,
Very uncertain. Very
yeah,
uncertain. I mean, I can't do anything until I get better. And who knows if I am going to get better? Like, I don't know. Like, I
yeah,
obviously had previously had very like loads and loads of trust in like, the medical profession and science. And I'm now like, oh, hang on a minute. Now what? Like, I'm sat here Googling my own research all the time, trying to work out what is wrong with me, how can I do it? And, you know,
looking for
I don't know.
solutions. Yeah,
And it shouldn't be that way. It should be them giving me the solutions and apologizing for what's going on. And I feel like it's very similar. Obviously, it's not the same and it cannot be compared. But there was the contaminated blood scandal with the haemophiliacs and the
right.
AIDS and everything. And that has only just been given like acknowledgement and ownership for what's going on. It's happening again. History is repeating itself and it needs to stop. Like, if you've done something and you know obviously with vaccine there's risks, why was there nothing in place to support us? And why every time we speak about it, like I contacted my MP, we've all contacted our MP, and we get directed to the yellow card service or yellow card scheme, and it's like, yeah, tell everyone your symptoms there. Okay, and then what happens?
Then what?
Nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
You just report it, and even still, you've reported it.
What's the point of reporting it almost?
On the media. It's not on the media. You'd think, like, I'm not being funny. If there was something else, like if it's a flu vaccine, like I saw an advert the other day that was like, you could get some side effects from the flu vaccine. Okay, right. So if we can all accept that the flu vaccine does it, why can't we accept that the COVID vaccine does it? And if we can all accept that COVID can cause all these things, right? All these symptoms, like you get long COVID and can make people seriously unwell, then what vaccine does it? And if we can all accept that COVID can cause all these things, right? All these symptoms, like you get long COVID and can make people seriously unwell, then why can't we accept that the COVID vaccine, I mean, a vaccine, to my knowledge, is taken from a part of a virus, which would have been COVID. Why can't we accept that that also does it? You know, and I feel like it's a big division at the minute. You're either team pro or you're team anti-vax, and all the injured are just kind of chilling in the middle, like getting bashed from either side. And you know, occasionally we'll get a few people that want to hear our story and hear it openly and not with a bias. You know, you're just like, okay, I just want to hear and share your story, you know. And I guess the way I look at it is, if I'd have got COVID, I feel like I would have been looked after. There would have been nurses and doctors rushing around me.
Right.
Why isn't that the same for the vaccine?
It makes no.
Like I said in my jabs post, collateral damage is what comes to mind.
Yeah, and I'll make sure I link up Charlotte's post as well, because
the jab post
it's an important page.
Of the podcast if you listen to that.
It's definitely it's hugely important. It's a complete list of people who have all found themselves in similar situations that Charlotte's in right now. But from a practical perspective, you know, moving forwards, you know, working, and that isn't even a possibility.
It's not an option
right now. Certainly not in the area that you wanted to work in.
No, it's all just kind of been stopped.
So I'm guessing you wouldn't even be able to go and work in, say, a job which involves very little movement, like in an office or a sedentary. Able to go and work in, say, a job which involves very little movement, like in an office or a sedentary role, because how would you get there? How would you get there? How would you get home?
I to go home all the time. I would be a really rubbish employee. I just have to go home doing
something. Even if you could even make it there, how long would it be till you would have to lay down to?
This is where I am.
Get your heart back to.
I don't know what else to do, and I feel like it annoys me because you see the whole thing about how bad anti-vaxxers are. Well, hang on a minute, how bad are all you lot for ignoring us? Like, I'm not anti-vax. If anything, the vaccine was anti-Charlotte. Like, you know, like it didn't like me, and I don't know why. But the thing is, if we've got the same energy for the anti-vax and how bad these people are and whatnot, that's fine. The media are like presenting it in that way, but why isn't there the same energy for the vaccine being anti-Charlotte? That should be a really bad thing, though, shouldn't it? Consent. People aren't being told what's going on. You know,
definitely.
I'm not here to tell you not to take the vaccine, don't take it, you're all going to die, because that's not what you want to be hearing. You know, we're not all going to die. We're all very worried. We're all very frightened, and we all just kind of stick together at this point. I'm here to tell you that when you get this vaccine, you're more than welcome to. You know, it's your choice to make. I ain't going to tell you it shouldn't. It's your choice to make. I was pro-vax. I took the vaccine. This is where I'm coming from. You're more than welcome to make that choice. And if you don't want the vaccine, you're more than welcome to make that choice. My issue lies in informed consent. Is my nan, right? She went and had her booster done the other day, and I was very lucky because she went and got me all the little leaflets that are telling you all about the side effects at the minute.
Oh, really?
So in the side effects leaflet, they say most of these are mild and short-term, very common side effects: painful arm, feeling tired, headaches, food symptoms. You know, they say Most of these are mild and short term, very common side effects: painful arm, feeling tired, headaches, food symptoms, and they're now also including a link to the Yellow Card app, which says to me, there are loads of us out there, because you wouldn't need to do that if it was safe.
Definitely.
These symptoms only last less than a week. If you get a new severe headache or pinprick bruising and shortness of breath and feelings of having a fast beating, fluttering or pounding heart, you should seek medical advice. Well, wasn't that what I was doing?
Yeah, absolutely.
And where did that get me?
You've done everything. You've done every single thing that you could have possibly done. You've made the right choices. At the time, but those choices were given to you as something that was the right thing to do. And now looking back, there wasn't informed consent there at all, because you were not informed.
I wasn't aware all this was going to happen.
No, of course. This sort of mental attack has, this whole gaslighting and mental attack has happened in so many different directions. Just pushing people back. The only way is to do this. This is the only way, is to take this vaccine, and every other direction, or even with proof beyond measure like yours, it's still pushed to the side.
I've been told there are many others like us, so there are loads of us, and this is just the people that know about it. Like, people could be walking around like I was, going, yeah, I'm fine. How many more people? It's booster season, so many more people are going to get jabbed, and unfortunately that means logically so many more are going to
be injured.
And this is what's sad, is you don't know what you're getting yourself into, because like I said about that, the side effects, I've just read to you what's in that little tiny leaflet. When you Google it, and on AstraZeneca alone, I've come across a 132-page document, all on the side effects reported to the Yellow Card scheme. So why haven't they included the 132-page document in their vaccination leaflet? You think, this is what's going on. You need to do something about it. It frustrates me.
It is absolutely. It's awful, the situation that you've been left in, not just from. I say not just from the perspective of your health and the uncertainty, but the abandonment is just, it's
terrifying.
And I wonder what people like you and people that are in your support group and others that have been affected as you have out there, what would be the ideal thing to help moving forwards? Obviously the ideal thing would be for everybody to get better, and for there to be
have someone that admits it first.
Yes, so there has to be that from a mental perspective, but then there's the health perspective, but then there's the support aspect as well, because can you be just left to survive an illness which you didn't have with zero support? Because if somebody had a disability that stopped them from being able to work, there would be support there. But you've been given a medical issue that's stopping you from being able to work or to get on with your life, and there's no. Get on with your life, you can't.
You can go down the benefit route, but that ain't going to float you, especially with the cost of living crisis and everything now. I mean, we're all in awkward predicaments, very awkward predicaments. And I feel like it's affected so much more than just your mental and your physical health. It's also then going to affect your finances and your, everything. It's also then going to affect your finances and your, everything.
Your future choices. Yeah.
I mean, family relationship, everything gets impacted. Your life gets turned upside down. And for me, living life is like walking on eggshells. You're very much stepping on eggshells, and you're like, oh, is this going to annoy it too much?
Yeah.
Not annoy the heart today. I have to be so careful with it. And I feel like at the same time, that's probably going to land me with a load of deconditioning anyway, because I can't physically get out and do it. So that's not going to do my heart any good. But the thing is, when I do try and do that, it doesn't really work. So, people come to me like, yeah, go for a walk. And I'm like, don't you think I would have tried that by now?
Yeah.
If it was that
Thank
simple.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks for that amazing idea. I haven't thought of it myself.
I will go and tell
Goodness
the top
me.
doctors in the UK that. But it's happening all over the world. It's happening everywhere. And like I said, I'm not a doctor. doctor. I can't tell you what you should and shouldn't do. But what I can tell you is my experience, which is what they're not telling you.
Yeah.
I can tell you what's going on, and there are loads of us in the boat. And you contact mainstream media, and I guarantee you, they don't want to know. They don't want to know.
Yeah, there are a growing, I fully feel that there are a growing group of people who are starting to come together, who are starting to speak to people like you, share your stories, and really push to make a difference. And I'm fully dedicated to making sure that we get voices out there, because we talk about, you hear some statistics, or occasionally somebody will say there's a number of people, but they're just numbers and figures. You're a human who's been through this, and I think that telling our stories is the most important thing we can do right now.
Their favorite word at the minute is rare. It's the favorite word, is we're all rare. And disinformation, like COVID-19, come and look at what's really going on. And I'm like, what? Hang on a minute. I mean, when I done my jab injuries post, I mean, I was contacted multiple times saying that I was shadow banned, and all my views dropped massively. And I was like, what?
Yes. Yeah, it's.
I had such a rant the other day. I was like, I'm mad about it. It was really annoying me. But yeah, it's not good. We need more help, is what we need.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to come and speak to me today, because I know I know now that it's not easy to be able to, first of all, relive everything. And I know you're super upbeat, and
you're a few days to process it.
Yeah.
I refuse to be on the bit, because if I do that, then I'm going to come off worse. Like, I'm going to feel really, really low. So I feel like if I put the big that other coping mechanism on, I feel a bit better. So, whilst I'm sitting here like, this is funny. It's not funny. None of this is funny. This is absolutely horrific. People have died. People have got really, really, really sick. And there's no help. So at the end of the day, yes, whilst I am able to tell you in a light-hearted manner to protect myself,
yeah, absolutely, it's a coping mechanism.
It's not good. It's really, really not good. It's absolutely disgusting what's gone on.
I fully agree, and I'm just. It's hard to hear everything and know what you've been through. I mean, your mum, your sister, all. Everybody that you're, it's surrounding you, and it's having a huge effect, and it's I just want to thank you for spending the time to come and explain it. And
thank you for listening, because not a lot of people do. And like you said, I will go with like verbal diarrhea, and I won't shut up, because I've just got
not at all.
much.
You've got a lot to say, and need to say it. Yeah, and that's the other important thing. You need to have that. Got a lot to say, and need to say it. Yeah, and that's the other important thing. You need to have that. That voice to be listened to, because it's isolating if you're
really, really
ignored as well.
I felt awful until I found the support group, because I was like, I know this is what's going on, now what? And then I found the support group and all the different things they've learned, and how they're feeling, and finding people my own age was also so helpful. So helpful, because they can relate. At 22, you want to be out and partying and living your life. I'm sat here watching everyone else live their life, and getting married and having kids and having this fantastic career moment. And that's all I've ever wanted. All I ever wanted was to go on the stage and sing my heart. I had a very promising career ahead of me, and that's now been stolen. And it's like, well, am I ever going to get that back? Hi, I'm here, I exist. I know. And the big thing about that, we're all misinformation. That
must absolutely infuriate you. It's absolutely it's shocking. But I thank you so much, Charlotte, for spending some time today. If people want to, you're very welcome. The pleasure is fully mine. Thank you. If people would like to get in touch with you and follow your story, where can they find you?
So I'm not very good at replying on the Instagram side of things, but you can, if you go to the Jab Injuries page, you can find my story there for starters. And you can also find me, Charlotte Sinclair 14. So if you search that on Instagram, but I warn you, I'm not very good at the replying bit. I'm more likely to reply to my emails, which is charlottelewissinclair@gmail.com. More likely to reply to you there. Instagram stuff. Like I said, like you watch everyone else living their life, and I get a bit like
I understand that fully.
using it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I said. And I guess the one thing to leave it on would be it's your choice whether or not you want.
Yeah.
It's your choice, but you need to be aware of what's going on and what they're not telling you. And the
Yeah.
biggest thing is that when you get sick, there's no help, you know. And I think that needs to change. There needs to be help. There needs to be people speaking out. The media need to own it, because at the end of the day, the more jabs people have, the more people are going to get ill, and the more and more
Yeah.
people are going to accumulate. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, the statistics are already high. You know, so we need help is what we need. We need people to listen. We need people to, get clinics and, perhaps therapists, and help us get back to normal, or at
Yeah.
least a better stage than what we are now. That's what we need. We need help.
Yeah.
We're
Definitely.
not misinformation. We're not rare. We exist. We're human beings. I'm here. I'm able to feel and think the same way as you are. And it don't matter which side of the argument you're on, you need help. We can all accept that if someone's sick, they need help. So why are we
Yeah.
not getting help? It just that if someone's sick, they need help. So why are we
Yeah.
not getting help? It just annoys me.
Yeah, no,
It
I
really annoys
fully
me.
feel that. I fully feel it. It's shocking the
Mm,
situation that people have been left in.
big
Thank you for
time.
taking the time to you just
Thank you.
told us so you've just
My
led us
whole life
through such a
story.
good yes, you've
Yeah.
beautifully shared your story, and I think the key parts, like you said, you've really closed those off nicely at the end
Mm,
there, in that you help, something needs to be done,
need help.
so I will be
Big
sharing
time.
far and wide, and I will continue to share people's
Thank
stories like
you.
yours. I hope we can
Thank
stay
you.
in touch, and
Definitely.
I would hopefully we'll be speaking again, and I'll be hearing that there's improvement and you're starting to head
I
out
would
on
love
that
for that to
career,
be the
which
case.
I'm sure you
Yes.
will. I hope
Thank
so.
you.
I'm
Thank
sure you
Yes.
will. I hope
Thank
so.
you. Thank
Okay,
you.
Charlotte, thank you so much for being here, and bye for
Thank
now.
you.
See you later.
Bye.
Well, I'm sure you'll agree that Charlotte's experience is truly shocking, and I can't get away from the fact that she's just one of the many, many stories that are out there that need to be shared. These people that have been injured, that are suffering, are not just a number. If you have your story to share, please get in touch with me at the Mrs. Watt, anywhere online. Send me a DM and let's get your story shared. This is important. This is powerful. Let's make sure we keep sharing. Accountability is the only way forwards and out of the other side of this incredibly confusing